Welcome to the Soufan Center briefing. I'm Naureen Chowdhury Fink, the Executive Director. The news about Afghanistan and the trajectory of the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and Islamic State Khorasan province has dominated recent counterterrorism discourse, alongside reflections on the 20th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. The question of whether Afghanistan can once again become a safe haven for terrorism under the Taliban's protection has been front and center. 2 decades after 9/11, Al-Qaeda remains diminished but not defeated. The group's leadership and ability to target the West are weakened, yet the organization could be positioned for a comeback in the global Salafi jihadist movement, and recent assessments suggest the Taliban's victory has been widely celebrated by jihadist groups and provided them a strong morale boost. While the global war on terror successfully mitigated the threat of a large-scale attack like 9/11 and decimated Al-Qaeda's leadership, the organization has proven to be remarkably resilient and strategically adaptive, moving from a hierarchical structure to a network in several regions through its established affiliates. We have seen, for example, strong Al-Qaeda and Islamic State affiliates in Africa, embedded in local and regional dynamics and challenging international counterterrorism actors, like the UN or the French Operation Barkhane. As communities around the world reflect on the 9/11 attacks and the aftermath, including the war in Iraq, the use of torture, the increased use of drones and surveillance, and a diminishing trust in governments in several countries, groups like Al-Qaeda continue to exploit such grievances and mobilize those who would use them for attacks against the West. The future of Al-Qaeda will depend on the extent to which it can replace talented leaders, capitalize on the U.S. diminishing its focus on counterterrorism abroad in order to focus on great power competition and domestic extremism, and exploit geopolitical and local sectarian tensions. Moreover, it continues to be challenged by Islamic State Khorasan province, which is also likely to continue to challenge the Taliban regime as well. Moreover, beyond the security risks, the Taliban's takeover and a resumption of terrorist activity bode ill for a civilian population that has been devastated by conflict and corruption, but where many have nonetheless sought to make great strides in terms of education, politics, the media, women's rights and culture, and rebuild a devastated state over the past 2 decades. The United Nations, as the last remaining international actor, will come under increasing pressure to deliver humanitarian and development assistance. However, there are complications in doing this work where designated terrorist groups operate and sanctioned individuals are in government. Also, both national and international staff will likely be increasingly vulnerable to attacks. UN missions, such as the one in Afghanistan, typically do not have counterterrorism mandates or resources, and while many argue about the merits of whether UN missions like that should actually be doing counterterrorism, there is nonetheless little systemic guidance and support across the UN system for how such missions and their staff should deal with the increased risks posed by terrorism, both on a personal, legal, and political level. From about 1996, it took Al-Qaeda just 5 years to go from a nascent, struggling organization to perpetrating the 9/11 attacks, benefiting largely from the safe haven in Afghanistan and inattention from the US and its allies. As countries struggle with the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent socioeconomic losses, with climate change and a more diverse security threat that in many places includes violent right-wing groups and domestic extremists, there is a risk that once again, inattention will create a conducive environment for a global terrorist threat, and groups like Al-Qaeda that have learned and adapted over the past 2 decades to our own counterterrorism approaches will once again pose a global and lethal threat. Thank you.